Today, we're going to be talking all about assertiveness. We'll talk about what it means, how to do it, and why it's important. Most people think, or at least most nice guys think, that assertiveness is what makes you an asshole. And this belief is exactly what leads you to be powerless. All right, if you think that being assertive is being aggressive, dominant, hurting people's feelings, causing problems and conflict, then this episode is for you. So this is by popular demand in my small audience. I asked you guys what you wanted and you said you wanted this. So that's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to break down some of the backwards beliefs and limiting beliefs you have about standing up for yourself and asserting yourself, some of the myths and fears you have around it, some of the conditioning and programming you've received from childhood that stops you from doing it. And this is for you if you relate to any of the following traits that I've got on my list here. You feel anxious at the thought of voicing a thought, feeling, or opinion that might cause others to have an uncomfortable emotional reaction. You let other people dominate you, all while telling yourself that you don't mind and you're just easygoing and you've got to pick your battles. The very idea of initiating a confrontation with someone you're sure will have a bad reaction to makes you feel physically unwell. When people start disagreeing with you or attacking you, you either freeze and panic, your throat starts swelling up, feel like you're going to cry, you just want the floor to open up and swallow you, or you get really defensive and you escalate uncontrollably and say things you'll later regret or say things that you feel are immature. And of course, if you think assertiveness means bullying, being selfish, dominating other people, always just getting your way, and that makes you feel like a good person for not doing it, if any of these apply to you, today is for you. Okay. I'm going to change your mind about what assertiveness means. That's my bold claim for today. I'm going to help you understand why honest confrontations are something you need to stop avoiding, and how to bring self-respect back into your life without losing control of your emotions or destroying good relationships. It's all possible. It's all necessary. Hopefully today I'm going to show you how it's done. So I want to start with sharing a little bit about myself and why this topic is so important to me. Until about the age of 25, when I started really working in corrections, I was more scared of confrontation than anything else, even death. I was the crybaby kid when I was little. I was highly sensitive, both emotionally and physically. So any kind of pain or mistreatment of any kind, I cried. And this led to a little bit of bullying, but mostly ostracism. I was the kid who cried, so I wasn't involved in the group. So I was conditioned to believe that showing upset meant social ostracism. So I learned not to cry. At the time, it felt like a great breakthrough. But this shut off my ability to express anger. Because I couldn't express anger without crying, to avoid crying, I now can't express anger. My parents never fought, not in front of me at least. I went to a very small, safe primary, elementary school. So the only time someone raised their voice or got stern with me, it meant I was in big trouble. I did not have much experience with confrontation, and that's what made me quite fragile to it. And then I went to a rough high school. Fights were very common. Kids were very aggressive. Some of the kids were total thugs, I ended up managing them on sentences when I worked for corrections later on. There was a constant risk of violence that became normal. And I simply could not stand up for myself. I didn't know how to do it. I didn't want to do it. I mean, I could have safe, rational debates with people who I trusted or weren't worried about. But if it started getting heated, or I seemed to be at real risk of being disliked, disapproved of, or I was at risk of getting punched or publicly humiliated, my body would just shut down. My heart would be racing. I'd be so tense, so hot, especially in the back of the neck. I get this really sore throat, like you do just before you're going to cry. And so I'd just back away because I was so worried about what would happen if I kept going forward, either how I'd humiliate myself by crying or sounding sort of defensive and weak, or I'd provoke a reaction from someone else that would quite literally be violent. So this meant I basically always just had to go along with the group. If I had disagreeable opinions that got a bad reaction, I just retract them. Oh yeah, I can see your point of view, that kind of shit. I'm always trying to make people laugh. Like, I figured the best way to avoid confrontation is prevent it from happening. So keep everyone in a good mood all the time. I would prevent and avoid conflict. So I'd even prevent other people from having conflicts with each other that had nothing to do with me. I'd just try and keep the whole atmosphere happy. If I had a girlfriend, I'd just let her have whatever she wanted. I'd always go with her ideas. I'd follow rather than lead. Sacrifice my own needs until I completely lost sight of them and started to think that sacrificing was my need, that that's who I was. I was this noble martyr, you know. All of this designed subconsciously to prevent the need for confrontation, to avoid any conflict. I think it's fair to say that the avoidance of conflict ruled my life, that was a factor in every decision that I made, every strategy I applied to life. One thing I kept in mind is what's the path of least resistance socially. And, later on when I was looking back over this, it was quite shocking to think that was the main goal for me, that everything I thought about, every hobby I chose, every sentence out of my mouth, everything I did in school, at home, it was all just to avoid conflict, which meant I had no idea what I really wanted and I wasn't pursuing it. Without assertiveness, I couldn't lead, I couldn't make bold decisions, I couldn't risk upsetting people, couldn't ask a girl out on a date, couldn't stand up for my friends when they were in danger, which made me feel really ashamed. There are times where I saw strangers in public that needed help, but I couldn't get involved as bystander effect. I was too worried that I would get involved in a conflict. And so I had to let other people get hurt in front of me. I mean, this is why bullying even survives. It's not the bully who's the problem, it's everyone watching, letting it happen. And I was one of the watchers, and I was incredibly ashamed of that. And then in my mid-20s, I became a probation officer. I'm not a spiritual person, but I really feel like it was fate. It was calling to me. I needed to do that work because everything that was weak about me would be addressed in that work. I don't know how I knew that. I was just very attracted to the idea of working with criminals. And I think some part of me had had enough of being an unassertive, spineless man and wanted to throw me in the deep end, which it did. So I was trained and forced to overcome my fear of conflict. I had conflicts with dangerous people every single day. And through this, I learned some amazing truths about what conflict really is, what aggression and submission is compared to assertiveness and how they're different, how being assertive actually keeps you safe. It doesn't provoke conflict, it actually reduces conflict, and avoiding conflict actually provokes it. And how it's actually in everybody's best interest for you to respect yourself, that this is not something you're taking away from them, but something you're giving to them, even if they don't like it in the short term. So that's what we're going to be talking about today, what I discovered through that process, which took me from more afraid of confrontation than anything else, and I'm not exaggerating. I would have put my life at risk to avoid a confrontation. All right. There was nothing that was more of a primary motive than not having conflict. Through to someone who could stand up to a serial murderer who has a history of assaulting staff. Right? I made that whole transition, and I'm going to show you guys how to make that transition too. It's something that can be learned. I am definitely not a natural talent. Right? My ability to assert myself now is 100% learned. I started at absolute zero. And if I can do it, anyone else can. Okay. All right. So let's start by having a look at what assertiveness is. All right. I think the main thing we need to differentiate is assertiveness, aggressiveness, and passive or submissive. People think generally, from what I see, to them the word assertive just means aggressive. Those are the same definition. And aggressive means to simply fight back, to overpower the person who's trying to overpower you, or just overpower anyone in general. And so people feel like there's a false dichotomy. There's a choice, either be aggressive or be submissive. And at least this was my belief system for most of my life. And all the people I see, when I ask them why they're not being assertive, they have a moral story about not harming others. Right? They don't hurt people's feelings. They don't want to reject them. They might have a story about, like, who am I to want this when other people want it? Like, I don't want to be selfish. Or they think that assertiveness creates aggression. They're going to hit me. They're going to hate me. They'll destroy the relationship. I'll lose my job. So they've got this all or nothing approach. And when it's all or nothing, they choose nothing. Right? Now, even people who are really aggressive also have this binary belief system. They think, I either have to give in and let people shit all over me, or I've got to fight hard and I've got to win and beat people. This is how psychopaths see the world as well. It's dog eat dog. No one's out here to be nice to each other. No one's kind. No one's altruistic. It's you get yours or somebody else will take it. Both of these belief systems, whether you're the one who walks down or the one who always steps up and fights, misses the third option, which is assertiveness. And when you discover and apply this option, not only will all the results be better in your life, it's actually easier than the other two. There's an analogy I'll use throughout this conversation of a fortress. Okay. So if you imagine you've got your own little castle with walls, okay, your own property, as I often talk about it. Aggression is when you shoot arrows out of your property onto other people. Okay, you harm people that are outside of your fortress, or you send your army out to battle other people at their fortress. You go and try and take over their fortress, dominate them, hurt them, change them in any way. So if you try to change somebody in any way, try to control or dominate someone in any way, that's aggression. That's leaving your fortress and going onto their property. Submissiveness is when you open the gates and let them in to do whatever they want. They come in here and they break windows and they steal stuff and they change things. That's submissiveness. You've allowed their aggression to change you. Okay. So that is aggression and submission, or passivity. Assertiveness is just locking up the castle, manning the walls, and not letting anyone in. You don't go and try to harm them, but you don't let them harm you. All right? You hold the line. No matter what they do, they don't get into the castle. They don't change things. They don't move you. But you don't try to move them. So if you're an aggressive person, you're always trying to move them. You're kind of preempting their attempt to hurt you by hurting them instead. We look at the justice system, for example. In most countries, there's a punish because they hurt us. So you hurt us, so we'll punish you. It's just aggression to aggression. Nobody's actually being assertive. Whereas if you have, say, like some sort of semi-restrictive rehabilitative sentence, it's like, we're not going to let you behave like that, and we're going to give you the opportunity to improve your behavior. That's assertiveness, right? There's no punishment, just a method that prevents bad behavior, all right? So the idea that being assertive harms others is not true. Being aggressive harms others. That's the very definition of aggression. But assertiveness is more like an electric fence. It only hurts them if they touch it. They don't have to touch it. You're not going to make them touch it. There's no need for them to touch it. They don't have to come onto your property. They have not been invited. They're not behaving in the way that is approved of that would allow you to open the gate and let them in. But they must choose to touch the electric fence to get hurt. It's like somebody scaling your castle walls and then getting cut down when they get to the top. If they hadn't scaled the castle walls, they don't get cut down. So you got to understand, they will only get hurt if they try to hurt you. And they will only get hurt the amount they need to be hurt to stop doing it. And if they don't want to get hurt, all they have to do is not try and change you, not be aggressive. And in fact, a lot of the methodologies I'll give you, they don't even need to get hurt at all. You're just going to take the castle away. They're not going to be able to find it. There's nothing for them to be aggressive towards. Okay. So when we're talking about assertiveness, we're talking about the practice of setting and enforcing boundaries. I'm sure you've heard the word boundaries a bunch of times. It's almost a cliche bullshit term at this point, but it used to have meaning. And if you keep that fortress in mind, the boundary is the wall. You're going to set the wall, and then you're going to enforce it. You're going to make sure that you defend your castle. Not get defensive, which we'll talk about later, but to make sure nobody gets in. The wall is enforced. Okay. For a lot of you, aggression is actually a wild attempt to set a boundary. You yell and scream and try to dominate someone with words. Setting a boundary is saying, this is what I want, this is what I don't want. This is what I'll accept, not accept, tolerate, won't tolerate. Here's the line. That's actually, it seems like the hardest bit, but it's kind of the least important bit. What really matters is enforcing boundaries. In fact, if you're really good at enforcing boundaries, you don't even need to set them. You just become somebody who cannot be changed by others, who don't have good intentions at least. Assertive doesn't mean you always get your way. That's aggressive. It doesn't always work. It's more that you won't allow yourself to compromise your values to suit somebody else's preferences. All right. You will give up their approval, their validation, the harmony of the social situation you're in. You'll give up all these nice things to live by your values. That's what assertiveness means. In fact, assertiveness is a kind of sacrifice of comfort, of approval, of other things, potential outcomes, maybe even keeping your job. Might be something you sacrifice so that you do not sacrifice your core values, your principles, your integrity. All right. That's the last line of defense. Once it gets down to choice between your integrity and anything else, integrity wins. That's what assertiveness means. It's a choice you're making about yourself. It's not a choice you're making about them. You're not going to try and change them. You're going to prevent them from convincing you to breach your own integrity. That's all. It's actually incredibly simple. I won't say it's easy. Emotionally, it's quite difficult. There's a lot of things you have to let go of, a lot of discomfort and emotional reactions you're going to have to endure, both from you and from them. But simply, it's not complex behaviors. You don't need to become some CIA spy with all these techniques. Oh, where did their eyes move? Did it go top left? That means they're lying. You don't need to do any of that. You just need to be like, I don't like this behavior. It stops here. You go do that somewhere else. Okay. We're going to get into the details of how later, but if it feels complicated, you're probably trying to be aggressive. If it feels complicated, you're probably trying to manipulate them, control them, get an outcome. Assertiveness is just no. That's it. It's very simple. Caveman-like basic. The difficult part will be working through your emotions. Stating your preferences, saying what you want and don't want, and so on. It's just about honesty. It's not about domination. Honesty is the primary value in assertiveness. Well, I'd say courage is for a lot of you. But it's really just about honesty. This is who I really am. This is what I stand for. This is what I want, don't want, and so on. I'm going to make sure that that's known. And when that's disrespected, I am going to take enforcement action. That's all. All I have to be honest about is what I really want, what I really believe in. I don't have to get my way. It doesn't mean that every preference is going to be enforced like law, but more like I'm not going to go down dishonestly. I'm not going to go down meekly. You're going to have to beat me into submission. I'm not going to just take it. I'm not just going to open the gates to a harmful person and let them in. Okay. Assertiveness does not require that they fear you or are intimidated by you. It does not require that you punish them. There's no punishment involved, though they might feel like it's a punishment sometimes when you withdraw privileges. But you're not trying to reduce their quality of life. Like I said, the electric fence, they don't have to touch it. Right? Their quality of life is fine if they want it to be. It's not about intellect. You don't have to be a really smart arguer. You don't have to be really articulate and quick-witted. That's aggression. When you try to win the argument, you don't have to win the argument. That's what's great about this. They can be all smart and funny and really quick with their words. Doesn't matter. They still don't get in the fortress, right? And it's not about negotiation. Negotiation is something that happens when everybody's respecting each other. One thing about assertiveness is we don't negotiate until respect is there. So we're not going to negotiate in a heated way. If you're heated, I just get into assertiveness. Negotiation's over for now. right? But when you're calming down and being pleasant and respectful of me and listening carefully, now we can negotiate in a calm, rational way. You don't argue with an electric fence. It just zaps you if you go too far. You're going to be an electric fence. Just zap. No, no permanent damage done. Just don't. No, you don't go there. Here's an unpleasant experience so that you don't go there again. Okay. The electric fence doesn't chase after the person, zapping them to death. As soon as a person steps back, no more electricity. Problem solved. They get to control this. You're not going to tell them what to do. They're going to learn to make decisions for themselves that are in their best interest. Assertiveness is not vengeance. We're not going an eye for an eye, aggression for aggression. If I get aggressive in response to you being aggressive, I'm not better than you just because you went first. I'm not justified just because you harmed me. The universe has been harming me since the day I've been born. I've got all the justification I need to go and kill everybody. That doesn't mean it's the right thing to do. And in fact, it's such a loss because if I allow you to make me aggressive, you win. So even if I take vengeance and punish you for what you've done to me, you controlled me. I lost control of myself. My pathway in life got diverted by your behavior. And this is why I'm so obsessed with assertiveness. Assertiveness is about staying on your path no matter what anyone else does. You neither get aggressive nor submissive. It's the third option where you stay strong and don't let them change you. Don't let them breach your integrity or be an excuse to breach your integrity. If someone shouts at you, you might shout at them back and they get all scared and you think, I won. But really they won because they made you shout. Now, if you kept your calm and kept talking like everything was fine, they didn't change you. You win. And it's not you beating them. You win against your own impulses, your own conditioning, your own arrested development. This is a battle against your own weaker impulses. Assertiveness is about standing up to yourself first and foremost. To say to yourself, no, I'm not going to react to this like an immature child. I'm not going to let this person ruin me. There's a book called Confessions of a Sociopath. I can't remember the name of the author. It doesn't matter because it's anonymous anyway. What she talks about in that book is how she enjoys ruining people. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean actually making their life a whole lot worse. It doesn't mean that like she destroys their career or ends their relationships. For her, the sociopath, ruining people just means changing them, making them obsessed with her, making them move in reaction to her. That's her whole primary motive for being. She says ruining people is delicious. Now, there are a lot of sociopathic people in the world. Not a lot of psychopathic, but a lot of sociopathic. There are a lot of people out there trying to change you because it's delicious. Assertiveness is when they try to change you and nothing happens. They just hit an electric fence and nothing works out for them. That's the true victory of assertiveness. They are still a jerk, and they're going to be a jerk for the rest of their life. They're still a sociopath. You don't change them. You're not going to educate them, correct them, make them a better person. They may choose to do that in response to your assertiveness. They might be inspired to be a better person, or you might inspire their better side to come out when they're around you because they respect you, but you're not actually trying to do that. You're just stopping them from changing you. Like I said, I've got a kind of controversial take on justice. Justice is not harming you because you harmed me. All right, that might feel satisfying in a brittle, insecure way. Victims of crimes often get a rush of triumph when the person's sentenced to imprisonment or whatever. But in the end, that just means the person had even more effect on them, had more impact on them. We might scoff at someone who says, look, I forgive you for what you've done to stay out of my life. Saying, oh, that's weak. No, he's unchanged. That's strong. To be able to go like, I'm not going to let you take me off my path. I'm not going to let you determine who I'm going to be. That's actually strength, not weakness. Okay. It's not the same as bending over and taking it, because that's submissive. That's allowing them to change you. All right. So the key values here are honesty and courage, but it's all to create respect. Self-respect more than anything else. You can't make them respect you. You could be the most assertive person in the world who enforces their boundaries perfectly, and people still won't respect you because they're incapable of respecting other people. Maybe they're psychopathic and they just have contempt for all other humans. Maybe you remind them of their ex and they can never like you. Doesn't matter. We're not going for their respect. However, if we respect ourselves consistently, we will get the most available respect from others. All right, there's the least available respect of others is what you get when you don't respect yourself. They will fill that space. If you stand up on the bus, somebody else will take your seat because that seat's available. If you don't speak up in the meeting, somebody else will fill that silence because you've made it available. The least you respect yourself, the more space opens up for others to dominate. Even if they don't mean to, even if they're genuinely decent people, they will fill the space. Right? They will enter a fortress if the doors are open. We're going to keep those doors shut. Those doors will only be open to people who are coming in with rational, good intentions who mean to improve our quality of life. They will be let in, and the moment they misbehave, they get kicked out again. It's like if you see the movie, God, what's it called? Shot Caller, with old Jamie Lannister. There's a bit where he says, I'm not looking for trouble, but I won't be taking any shit either. That's assertiveness. All right? I won't be taking shit, but I'm not going to be causing it either. Okay? I know I've kind of hammered this definition home, but if you understand the definition, that's half the work done. It's not understanding what assertiveness is that leaves most people stranded in either being aggressive or passive. All right, so that's what assertiveness is. Let's start looking at the why. I like to go what, why, how in all my structures. So let's have a look at the why. We're going to have a look at the causes, why people struggle to be assertive, what prevents us, what gives us the fear, and how we might be able to overcome that. And also we're going to have a look at why being assertive is important. If I haven't sold it to you already, I hope to do so by the end of this particular section. Okay. Let's have a look at why people struggle with assertiveness and why to make it a high priority goal to work on this. I think when we're talking about the struggle, what we mostly need to talk about is fear. Assertiveness ultimately is about overcoming certain fears, or at least facing them. One of the main fears, as I mentioned earlier, is I don't want to be the bad guy. Being raised and conditioned to believe that anyone else being assertive is the same as them being aggressive, that they're being selfish, dominant, bullying, at the very least inconsiderate of others' feelings, hurting other people. And if you're a nice guy and a people pleaser especially, you're going to think, I don't want to be that. That's worse than being the pussy who everyone dominates. If I have to choose between bully or victim, it's better to be a victim. It's more noble, heroic to be a victim. At least I'm not a bully, you might tell yourself. So the fear of being the arsehole is often what lets people justify taking shit from others. And as we've talked about, this is mostly a misunderstanding about what assertive is. If you look back carefully and look at all these instances of people being both assertive and aggressive, and think of the definition we've talked about today, you'll realize there's a difference. That, the school bully going around punching people in the back of their head, that wasn't assertiveness, that was aggression. But the kid who spoke up in class when the teacher was wrong and said, wait, that doesn't make sense, that was assertiveness, not aggression. He wasn't being a prick. He was standing up for the truth. Those are different. They're not the same thing at all. When your parents yelled and screamed at you and made you face the wall in the naughty corner, that's aggression. But when they took your toys away calmly because you were throwing them against the wall and said you can have them back later when you calm down, that wasn't aggression. That was assertiveness. They were removing your ability to be disrespectful. It's not the same. They weren't hurting you. It hurt when the toys were taken away. But you don't need those toys to survive. Okay? Those toys were a privilege, and you lost the privilege because of your behavior. That's assertiveness, not aggression. All right? When the CEO is running the team meeting, and he's like, if I don't get these results, 3 of you are getting fired, that's aggression. But when he says, look, according to the contract here, you guys have agreed to do this much work. You're not doing as much as I asked for. If it happens again, I will have to let you go. That's not aggression. That's assertiveness. And once you can see the difference, you'll realize, hey, the assertive people never really hurt me. It was like an electric fence. It was up to me. I only got hurt if I behaved poorly, if I broke the contract, if I disrespected them. If I didn't do that, everything went fine. That means they're not aggressive people. Now, if the person, like if I'm just minding my own business and I am doing what they ask and they still hurt me, that's aggressive, not the same thing. Okay. Another reason we fear it is just conditioning. Many of us are raised, like I was, to think that being angry is wrong. Even old philosophies like Stoicism, which I mostly agree with, say that anger is like some sort of disease, some sort of mental illness that needs to be cured. But anger is the driving force behind assertiveness. Now, just because it's also often the driving force behind aggression doesn't mean that anger is bad. Aggression and assertiveness are choices of expression. One's healthy and one's unhealthy. Anger's behind both of them. Anger is just energy. Anger is just strength. Anger is courage. You notice that you tend to overcome fears when you get mad about them and go, fuck this, I can't deal with this. It's happening. That's when you finally do the thing you've been putting off and procrastinating because you're scared of. That's what anger's for. It's to help you push when your fear is irrational, when your fear is holding you back in a way that actually harms you. Anger is the override. But if you were raised to think that something was wrong with you just for feeling anger, and when you had a tantrum when you were a kid, your parents were like, I'll give you something to cry about, and scared the shit out of you when it came to being angry. Or you got sent out of class because you disagreed with the teacher. Or you got punched by the kids at school because you yelled when you got upset or you cried. Like, this was conditioning telling you, I can't be angry. And if you're not allowed to be angry, then you lack the necessary motivation to be assertive. Because here's the bit that you're going to find quite uncomfortable. A lot of the times when you're being assertive, you're going to feel angry, plus scared and confused and a bunch of other stuff too. But you need to make your peace with anger. Anger is not a harmful substance of some kind. Anger doesn't touch anybody. It's behavior that hurts people. And if you could channel the anger into assertiveness rather than aggression, then anger will always be healthy. Your expression of anger will always be healthy. Anger itself is always healthy. Just because one guy hits his wife when he gets angry, it doesn't make it anger's fault. It's aggression's fault. He could stand up to her and say, I won't tolerate this behavior from you anymore, and go for a walk. He could have done that and been just as angry, right? Anger didn't hit the wife as aggression did. So you tried to stand up for yourself as a kid and you got punished, and you took this to mean that I can't assert myself. You were told you were being aggressive, perhaps. You're told you're being inconvenient in some way emotionally for the adults surrounding you. And you're too young and immature, and your brain wasn't developed enough to recognize that they are contradicting themselves, that they are hypocrites. If someone yells at you because you are having a tantrum, they're having a tantrum too. Right? They're breaching the very thing that they're complaining about. If your teacher got mad at you because you were being disruptive in class and sent you out of the room, get out of there, they're no better than you are. They're no more self-controlled than you are. Now, if the teacher calmly said, look, if you speak up again, you're going to have to go sit outside. Oh, you spoke up again, all right, you're going to need to go outside. That's assertive. But if they lost their shit and threw chalk at you, it's happened to me, they're no more mature than you are. You're raised to believe there was something wrong with you. Also, like me, you might have actually been raised in a house that was either too gentle or too violent. In my case, it was too gentle. So aggression was suppressed. I didn't get to see it. I wasn't involved in confrontations. I didn't watch confrontations happen, and I didn't watch confrontations happen and see that like the relationship can still continue afterwards. So it got to a point when I finally was hanging out in other people's houses and watching their parents argue. I was like, oh my God, are they getting divorced? And the kid's not even noticing. He's like, no, it's a Tuesday. They fight every Tuesday. I was so bubble wrapped and protected from confrontation that I just had no sort of thick skin for it, combined with being a highly sensitive kid, both physically and emotionally. You know, it's a recipe for having a big reaction whenever somebody got confrontational, whether that was assertive or aggressive. So I'm not used to the heat, you might say. And then, of course, there are other people where it was violent or close to it, where there was constant drama and conflict in the house, and people often got hurt emotionally or physically as a result of that drama. And they can be quite traumatized, essentially, and reactive, triggered by confrontation. And so, of course, they don't want to be assertive because they don't want to set it off. Them being assertive in their house was World War III every time, so they learned quickly to keep their mouth shut and just take it. Or they just always fight. So as soon as someone disagrees with them, they go full 100 out of 100 because that was the only way to win in your house. Both of those extremes create an unhealthy belief and sort of conditioned response to conflict. But if you're in a house where people set boundaries and enforce them assertively with you, with each other, in front of you, with strangers, and you got to see like, oh yeah, that's a pretty healthy way to get through things. It's a bit uncomfortable, but it's what's best for everyone in the long run. Then you develop assertiveness. And if that's you, congratulations. I don't know why you're watching this because you already have it sorted. And you're one of 3% of people. If you just watch adults, watch them carefully and go, are they really adults or are they more like kids? You'll see. They either back down and people please or they throw a Karen-like hissy fit and they show that they're either aggressive or submissive. Very few people have mastered assertiveness. By my observation, I'd put it at way less than 10% of people. Full-grown, mature adults. Most people either fight hard, get emotional, allow that to control them, or they back down, avoid, prevent conflict. They're either people pleasers or kind of bullies, right? Or at least very reactive. Very few people can just hold the line, can just be unmoved. And by unmoved, I don't mean you don't get emotional. You can't control that bit, but behaviorally. To be like, you're not taking me off my path. You will not make me compromise myself. That's very rare. So there's no shame, by the way, if you struggle with this. You're one of the majority. Okay? Everybody else is like you. And if you just stop worrying about yourself and watch everyone else, you'll see everyone's doing this. Okay? And this is the kind of modeling we're exposed to. This is another reason we struggle with it. If we thought that other people were being assertive, but they were being harmful, selfish, and they were wrong a lot of the time, like fighting a losing battle, then we can see that that's not something we want to be. And so we actually rebel against it by being passive. I don't want to be that jerk who's just trying to get his way all the time and he's always in the wrong and doesn't seem to be aware of it. So I'll be the other thing, the only other thing. Of course, discomfort has got to be one of the main players in this. We're all naturally wired against discomfort anyway, unless we've had really, really good conditioning when we're children. And one of the biggest excuses I hear from people about not being assertive is just the hassle. They don't want the emotional hassle. They don't want to have to deal with it. I can't be bothered, they say, which is a subtle way of saying I'm afraid of emotional discomfort. Other people's, my own, both, doesn't matter. I'm afraid of it happening. And I'd rather sacrifice everything I believe in than endure just a few minutes of it. And this is the kind of tragic truth about human psychology. We will kill ourselves, ruin our lives just to avoid a hassle. Like the extremes we will go to just to reduce the amount of hassle we have to deal with emotionally is beggars belief. You know, I've worked with a lot of criminal offenders. How many of them ended up in prison, life completely destroyed, and you trace it back and it's just because they didn't want the hassle of having a job, the hassle of standing up to someone with words rather than violence, the hassle of dealing with emotions without using drugs. They just didn't want this hassle, and it led them to do such extreme countermeasures. And this is true of almost everyone I see. Almost everyone I see, if the choice is between discomfort and something else, they'll choose something else before they even know what it is. That's how they're wired. Assertiveness is rarely met with a happy response, okay? Occasionally, you'll be assertive with a really healthy person. They'll be like, fucking respect. But that's going to be occasional. Most people are going to react in a way that you're worried about. Now, very few of them will actually be violent. Few of them will even raise their voice. But most people will react to your assertiveness with discomfort. And you have to be willing to do that trade-off, to pay that price. Self-respect is earned. This is the cost, okay? You're guaranteed an emotional ride when you stand up for yourself. However, it does reduce over time. But even to this day, I've been coaching for 13 years, so it's been that long since I left corrections. My heart rate still goes up when I have to confront someone. Still, okay? I think that is so deeply ingrained in my psychology from childhood that it's irreparable. I'm never going to get to that and fix it. Maybe some somatic healing's needed or something, But the reason I don't bother trying to fix it is because I don't actually need to. As long as I'm okay with my heart rate going up and my voice maybe getting a little tight, we're all good. I can still confront. So as long as you're okay with the truth that you are going to get uncomfortable and so are they, at least be prepared that that's going to happen and be pleasantly surprised when it doesn't, then you can do this. Being assertive does not require that it does not require inner peace, right? You can be assertive and agitated. It's not the same as aggressive. Aggression is usually a way to end the agitation. When somebody uses violence, it's because they can't handle the emotions that they're going through. Okay, if they could handle the emotions, they could keep it to words. You might also have self-worth issues. A lot of people don't assert themselves from a "I'm not good enough, I don't deserve it" worldview. I put it to you that the "I'm not good enough" story is actually an avoidance of conflict. That you've created this low self-worth as an excuse to not have to stand up for yourself. At least that's part of the reason. It's not that you actually don't think of yourself as a good person or a valuable person, but it's a helpful narrative to have so that you don't have to actually assert yourself in any way. If you can say, look, I'm a worthless piece of shit, provides no value, then that's good justification for not asking for what you want and not demanding that someone behave differently and so on. Right? So if you inherently have great shame about yourself, assertiveness is going to feel selfish. It's going to feel like you're a grandiose bully, like you don't deserve respect, and therefore it's very easy to talk yourself out of it. And of course, a lot of you think that being assertive is harmful. You think even if you know that there's a difference between assertive and aggressive, you still realize that some people will have upset reactions to you just being assertive. You know, a simple example is a child. It's like, can I have another ice cream? No. Man, it's like you saying no to another ice cream is actually in their best interest. It's their health. They're too emotionally immature to manage their health properly, so you got to step in as the parent. But they still got hurt feelings. They don't understand this whole thing. They're not on board with your argument. And now their day is ruined, right? And a lot of people, that is like a counter argument to assertiveness. They think if me being assertive means that somebody else has an upset reaction, even if their upset reaction is irrational, and even if there's no permanent damage done, I still can't be assertive. I can't even let them have that experience. So it comes from a deep belief that any unpleasant emotional experience is somehow more harmful than anything else you could do. So it's better to give the kid another ice cream, make them obese and give them diabetes and make them, ruin their palate so they can't even enjoy the taste of healthy food and make their emotions binge and crash all the time. That's better than them being upset that they couldn't have an ice cream. So many people behave according to this belief system. How many managers I've worked with let their staff just be terrible, basically, because they'd rather their staff eventually lose their job from being an underperformer than actually have to have their staff get upset while you correct their performance. And I just say this out loud because if you think that being a good person always means you get a good, positive, emotional reaction from people, you are fucking deluded. Good people often get upset reactions. The greatest kind of metaphor or analogy for this, no, it's just an example, don't know why I'm using fancy words, is a drug intervention. The heroin addict comes home, opens the door, and everyone's who he loves is sat around in a circle with some weird dude with a clipboard who he's never met. What the fuck is this? He's already uncomfortable. Clipboard guy is like, take a seat. Just take a seat. And everyone starts pulling out these notes they've written, and just start reading to this guy like, you stole money from me, you've disappointed me, you hurt my feelings all the time, and he just gets this wave of criticism. And none of that is enjoyable for him. The opposite. This might be the worst day of his life. The shit he hears, the guilt, the shame, the rage. But that is absolutely the best thing to do. It's either that or let him kill himself on drugs. How are you a good person if you let them die from drugs? How does that make you a good person? Isn't it better that he hates you, maybe forever, but is inspired to get to rehab, get clean, and actually have a decent life? Assertiveness is the risk that somebody will hate you. It is the risk that they will not take it the right way, that they won't agree, that they will be so offended and hurt from their fragile egos that they never forgive you. But taking that risk is what makes you a good person. Avoiding that risk and just giving them what they think they want, even though it's harmful for them, and even though it harms you, that doesn't make you a good person, it makes you weak. Okay. That's the hardest thing I learned with working in corrections and rehabilitating criminals. Most of the things I needed to do for their best interests hurt their feelings in some way. Made them angry, upset, bored, disappointed. That was what they needed, and they thanked me for it later, or they didn't. Sometimes they didn't, and at least I stopped them killing someone else, or beating their wife again, or drink driving again. Right? I at least asserted a boundary on behalf of society and reduced their harmful behavior. They didn't like that. But letting them do it, would that make me a good person? I think you know the answer, right? There's also the receiving, like you've been hurt with criticism. You've been hurt by aggressive people before. Maybe you even have a bit of fragility yourself, and someone being assertive hurts your feelings. You got offended. You didn't talk to them ever again just because they gave you the feedback that you actually asked for, and so on. So you're reluctant to become the harmer. You've been harmed. You don't want to cause that feeling for other people. So you don't want to become the person who harmed you. You can understand assertiveness is not criticism. If someone's criticized you and that hurt you, that wasn't assertiveness. That was aggression on their part, especially if it's unsolicited criticism. You hadn't opened the door to the fort. They just started chucking arrows over it, right? If somebody hurt you with feedback, they were being aggressive. They were trying to change you. Unsolicited feedback is always criticism. Criticism is always aggression, all right? There's a difference between assertiveness and criticism. If I say, I don't like this song, that's assertiveness. I'm just expressing my preference. If I say, your choice in music sucks, that's aggression. That's criticism. So assertiveness isn't your choice in music sucks. Assertiveness is, I don't like this song. You listen to it if you want, but I'm going somewhere else. I can't stand the song. I'm going to take myself away from the song so it doesn't hurt me anymore, right? So if you're reluctant to be assertive because you think that being assertive means to hurt other people's feelings and be critical, no. It might still hurt their feelings if they take it personally, but you're never actually going to be talking about them. You're going to be talking about yourself. It's not you're a bad person. It's I don't like this, so I'm out. It's kind of like you see it on that Dragon's Den program, all those filthy billionaires. Somebody would come and pitch their product. Sometimes they criticize that that's a terrible product and your marketing's awful. That's criticism. That's aggression, trying to change them. Some guys just go, yeah, no, I'm out. That's just assertiveness. Just saying, that's not my thing, not my cup of tea. I'm out. Right? So these beliefs, and there's probably many more, these beliefs drive the kind of fears that lead us to be either aggressive or passive instead of assertive. And if you can see through these beliefs, see the lies in them, see the conditioning and programming that misinformed your view of the world, then it opens up the possibility to be assertive. And now I'm going to talk about why being assertive is so good and so helpful to help you start to change your belief system that will allow you to be assertive without being so afraid. Okay. Why be assertive? A lot of this is going to be my opinion. You decide for yourself. Self-respect is one of the three main pillars of self-confidence, in my opinion. In other words, it's necessary. If you cannot respect yourself, then you cannot be confident. If you cannot be confident, you cannot fully enjoy your life. That's the premise I'm putting out there. That's my claim. I'll die on that hill. If you believe that and agree with it, then you have to understand that self-respect is built almost entirely by assertiveness. If respect is inside the fortress is what protects it. That fortress is made of assertiveness. Respect is you backing yourself, saying, I'm okay the way I am. This is the path I'm on. I'm going to keep walking this path. I like this guy. We're going to do what this guy needs, right? Your self-worth is based on how you treat yourself, not how others treat you. Well, put it this way. If you don't treat yourself well, it will be based on how others treat you. And if you've got low self-worth because of how others treated you throughout your life, this is your chance to change that. This is your chance to redeem yourself, to take the power back. See, nobody's ever really hurt you without your permission, without you actually mistreating yourself. If the bully teases me, it's my reaction that really decides if they hurt me or not. If I get aggressive in response, then they've moved me. If I back down and cry and take it and don't stand up for myself, then they've moved me. If I just hold strong and just be like, whatever you think, bro, and keep doing my life, then they haven't hurt me. Okay, now somebody can still hurt you physically, and sometimes the insults are sharp and they get through your armor and all that. I'm not talking about not being hurt that way. When I say not being hurt, I mean not being changed, not allowing yourself to become a lesser person as a result of their behavior. So how you treat yourself, that self-respect, is mostly about you sticking to your path for your reasons, your values, regardless of what anyone else does. Sure, you can be inspired to even greater moves, and of course you're going to let in people who are good for you and let them change you, but that will be your choice. You're going to allow this change in. Being dominated by somebody else, whether you get aggressive or passive, is being changed without permission. You've let them move you. You haven't filtered who's moving you. If I go to a dance instructor and say, look, give me feedback on my technique, make sure it's better, I'm letting them in, okay? But if I'm just dancing with someone at the club and there's like, oh my God, your hands are too hard or whatever, I'm like, oh no, I've got to change the way my hands work. Then I've been dominated. I was cool with what I was doing before they said that. I didn't ask them for feedback. If I let them now change who I am, I'm not treating myself well. All right. One of the ways you can look at it, especially if you're a people pleaser, is what's the difference between how you treat others and how you treat yourself? Look at the double standard. Look how much you sacrifice yourself for others, but wouldn't let them sacrifice themselves for you. How often you put their needs first, but don't put your needs first. How often you'll listen, but you don't let yourself talk. Like, that's treating yourself badly. All right. Treating yourself well would mean that whatever you think is good behavior to others is you also do it to yourself. And that's where assertiveness comes in, because you're going to be quite uncomfortable doing that. If you get on the bus and there's a seat available and you would let someone have that seat, give that seat to yourself. It's the same treatment to yourself as to others. Now, you might get up and give the elderly lady with the broken leg the seat. That's fine. But if you leave the seat open just because a kind of selfish looking person was going for it, that's you treating yourself badly. Okay. We're not going to go and steal a seat from somebody else. That's aggression. All right. But we're not going to take shit either. So assertiveness gives you the ability to protect yourself from harmful influences from others without trying to change them. And that's why it's so critical to your self-worth. If you've had self-worth problems your whole life, I fucking guarantee you've also had assertiveness problems your whole life. Assertive people might have other issues, but they do not have low self-worth. All right, those two things are a cause and effect fucking relationship. There are aggressive people who have low self-worth, nearly all of them. All right, so you might think, oh, I always fight my fights. I'm like, yeah, but how do you fight them? If you've got low self-worth, almost certainly you're not being assertive. You're being something else. That's why I think this is so important. Because what is more important to your enjoyment of life than having high self-worth, having confidence, liking who you are, thinking, I like this guy, I like the way he does things, let's keep doing it. I'm not talking about ego. I'm just talking about earning self-respect with your behavior, behaving a way where you're like, I admire the guy. Assertiveness gives you healthy connections. Now, a lot of people ruin their relationships. Half of my clients are getting divorced or already divorced because they weren't assertive. And they weren't assertive because they thought being a people pleaser was good for the relationship, because it got short-term positive emotional responses. And they thought short-term negative emotional responses means they're doing something wrong. Assertiveness often gets short-term negative emotional responses, but gets long-term protection of the relationship. If you say no to your wife, she might be like, oh, but she now respects you more, which means she'll want to stay with you and she'll like you more and she'll be attracted to you. That's good. All right. But that's going to come later. Right now, she's mad at you. Let her be mad. It's fine. All right. She's not getting her preference. You haven't harmed her. She just didn't get a privilege or a preference that would have disrespected you. Yeah. Assertiveness gives people the guidance they need to have a healthy connection with you and a healthy relationship. If you're saying like, do this and don't do that if you want to be with me, then you've given them like a blueprint for being with you in a way that works. Otherwise, they have to guess. And I promise you they are going to guess wrong because everyone's got different preferences. A lot of people don't assert themselves and they just do a covert contract. They think, oh, you should just know how to treat me. Everyone's got different rules, mate. They don't know your rules. They've got different rules. They're treating you the way they think the rules are for them, or they're treating you just the way you let them. I've got to share this bit. All nice guys should watch the movie Speak No Evil, okay, the recent version of it. I've told this to so many people. There's a line in it where a guy's being dominated by essentially a serial killer. He goes, why are you doing this to me? He just turns to him and goes, because you fucking let me, mate. And the whole movie is about this build-up of boundaries being crossed. It's a very accurate representation of how to manipulate someone with discomfort by just slowly crossing more and more boundaries and noticing that they don't stand up for themselves, so you cross another one. If you want someone to have a healthy connection with you and you want to identify early people who are never going to have a healthy connection with you, assertiveness, boundaries, confrontations will quickly set the scene. If somebody respects your boundaries early on and their behavior shows it, you got a good chance of going the distance. But if they start pushing back on boundaries really early on, you can be like, you know what? Let's not waste our time here. Goodbye. Yeah. You know, there's a common complaint about people not seeing red flags early in the relationships. Well, red flags only come up if you assert yourself. I mean, other ones come up in other reasons, but if you don't assert yourself, you're not going to know what the problems are going to be with this person. You're not provoking the beast, so to speak. So if you don't say, I like this, I don't like that, do this, don't do that, you're not going to get a reaction. You're not going to see what that reaction's like. Like I said, you don't always have to get your way. And if somebody else actually has a fair point to make, and it turns out you're being unreasonable or irrational with your preferences, that's fine. You can allow that to change you because it's actually changing you for the better. But if someone says, like, don't be honest, like, wait, that's my value. That honesty's happening. Get on board with that program or get out, right? Love is not enough for a relationship to keep going, okay? It needs boundaries. You need to protect the relationship from each other. Both of you are going to behave in ways that can hurt the relationship. Assertiveness is about stopping that from happening, to put a wall around the relationship itself and protect it from your lesser behaviors, both sides of the fence, okay? And this goes beyond romantic or friends as well. This is co-workers. Quite often your co-workers are not someone you would actually be friends with. If they are, you're quite lucky. So you need a professional relationship. You need to be able to do the projects together, even if you don't really like each other that much. And that's why you can actually have a relationship that requires no liking whatsoever, no love, just an agreement that people stick to. So co-workers, other collaborators, even your own boss, make sure they never need to guess the best way to work with you. They never need to just make up how they're going to interact with you. Lay it out for them so clearly that they never have to figure it out for themselves, and so that you can quickly see if they're not going to do it. If you say something like, please don't email me on the weekends, just email me during work hours, and then they email you on the weekend, bing, red flag, probably time to start looking for another job if you can't get rid of this boss, right? You can see the disrespect really early. Whereas if you don't speak up, you don't actually know if the guy would change according to your preferences. Assertiveness means you never miss out on opportunities, because assertiveness is saying what you want. You don't have to force someone to get it. You don't need to seduce them into giving it to you. But if you just constantly say, I want this, can I have that? You're going to get the most yeses possible. Now, if you never say it, you're going to get the most no's possible by default. So if you lie awake at night wondering if you missed opportunities in life, or you regret the ones you know you missed, understand assertiveness is the thing to work on. Because if you're assertive all day long, you go to bed going, that is the most good things that could have happened to me today. I didn't miss out on any of them, right? And anybody that said no to me, that was never going to be a yes, right? And that way you get this peace from that. When you assert yourself all the time, you just get this peace knowing, like, I've done all that I can do. And you don't get that waking up at 3 a.m. going, fuck, there's like an open loop in my head of what could have been or should have been said and so on. Yeah. I've already said this point, but you'll quickly identify and repulse bad fit connections. One thing is if you're just constantly assertive, so anytime you're in any conversation, you always say your opinion, you always stand up for what you believe in. When you meet someone, they will be pushed away if they're not a good fit for that. I used to constantly be battling with bad fit connections. And then I got more confrontational and I thought, okay, I'll be fighting it. But what happened is I just didn't need to use confrontations hardly ever, because very early on, people would be repulsed by my assertiveness, by who I really am. They didn't like me for who I am, essentially. Or, and this is really important, people who like to manipulate others, users, abusers, sociopathic people, they're not looking for a challenge. I promise you that. In the movies, yeah, but in real life, they want the easy target that they can just dominate effortlessly. They hate a hassle. So if you show that you're a hassle to dominate, that you always speak up, that you always hold the boundary, that you always enforce the boundary, they're going to move on to somebody else. And I've noticed this even physically when I started learning martial arts, because I was getting in fights and getting my ass kicked. So I went and learned a bunch of martial arts, and now I'm like, okay, now I can fight, which might have been delusional, but I believed it was true. I haven't had a fight since. I've been in more confrontations than I've ever been in before. No fights, no violence. And criminal offenders taught me this, that they're actually attracted to someone who's scared of violence. When they're walking around looking around, who to mug or do worse to, they're looking for the person who's not going to fight back. They're not looking for the person who's going to go 12 rounds and fight to the death. They want to win. They always win. If you got an aggressive person who always wins, it's because they carefully choose their victims. It's not because they're particularly skilled, right? It's like in Game of Thrones, the guy says, oh, you got nice armor. There's hardly a scratch on it. He says, well, people have been swinging at me. They always miss. And the first guy says, oh, you must choose your opponents wisely, right? If you become a difficult opponent, people will just leave you alone. If you've got a history of bringing narcissistic, abusive type people into your life, assertiveness is going to clean that right up, because they just don't want the hassle. Okay. And so assertiveness is really the preemptive protection against manipulation. For manipulation to work, there's one thing that needs to happen more than anything else. You need to be silent about the manipulation. That's how it works the most. Okay. If you're calling it out all the time, if you're admitting that you're being manipulated and making that clear to everyone who's watching, the manipulative person gets a spotlight on them, which they do not want. All right. For manipulation to be effective, there needs to be a secret about the manipulation. Okay. But if you call it out, you're doing it to me, it might be a very uncomfortable conversation, but now it's really hard for them to keep doing it. And if you always call it out when it happens, they have no interest in doing it with you anymore. They will go pick someone else. And if nothing else, to sell the idea of being assertive, bowing down to others all the time feels like shit, doesn't it? Don't you hate it? Don't you hate yourself when you're doing it? And not only does it make you feel like shit, it turns them into spoiled brats. Like when we are unable to assert ourselves and we disrespect ourselves, we elicit the worst from other people. Like I said, we create a space. And if they've got negative tendencies, they will fill that space. And they might hate themselves for doing it later, right? I remember I was talking to a girl who was dating a nice guy. And she said, I just push him down under my thumb and I just push and push and push. And I don't want to, and I hate being this person. I've never wanted to be this girl. But he just doesn't push back and I can't help it. I'm just picking away at him all the time. Now, that doesn't mean that she's completely blameless in her behavior. She needs to take responsibility for pushing that thumb. But he provoked her by constantly being passive. That push that she was doing came from a subconscious drive to try and get some assertiveness from him because she didn't feel safe with him. As somebody once said to me, if a woman knows that you'll stand up to her, she'll believe that you can stand up for her. So vice versa, if you don't stand up to someone, they'll think that you won't stand up for them either, which means that they can't trust you. They don't think that you've got their back. But if they see that you don't ever let a crime go unpunished kind of thing, you will always stand up, then they'll be like, hey, if I get into a fight, I hope this guy's there. So everyone fails in the long term when you're not being assertive. You're not doing them any favors by spoiling them, by indulging their worst traits and characteristics, by letting them get away with anything. That's not helpful to them. If you let a child just have their way whenever they have a tantrum, you're not doing them a service. You're making them a miserable brat. And in their adulthood, they're going to struggle immensely and they're going to find it very hard to enjoy life. You might get into a relationship with someone, they've got some bad tendencies. They're not like a not decent person, but in certain circumstances, they behave poorly. You can help them correct this behavior by providing a wall, right? It's like you can help a smoker quit smoking by removing all cigarettes from their proximity. Doesn't mean that they'll quit, but you're giving them a real fighting chance. If you're with a partner who always looks through their partner's phones, and you'd be like, look, you do that again, the relationship ends. And the next time they do it, you're like, bye. And they come back a week later, like, I'll never do it again. Like, you're giving them a chance to stop the thing that's actually been ruining their lives. And they only did it because they were allowed to do it. They don't actually want to be this person. So assertiveness provides a kind of training ground for others. Again, you're not trying to change them, but you're giving them a space where they're forced to either change or leave. And that might be the inspiration they need. Right? So we're going to get into the how-to in a minute. Remember, if you want any personal support with this, get in touch, dan@brojo.org. I'll either give you a discount on my Boundaries course, which goes into much greater how-to detail, or I'll help you personally. Okay, you can apply for a free coaching session. All right, let's have a look. We're going to have a look at some alternative behaviors from being aggressive or passive, and we're going to have a little look at how to manage the emotions, or should I say how to accept and endure the emotions, which gives you a hint. First and foremost, for now, forget the old cliche of pick your battles. Nice guys and people pleasers who avoid conflict, or even aggressive people who build up and snap, it's often because they're avoiding a lot of conflicts. They say, like, this is too petty to say something about, or I don't want to cause a fuss, or it's not the right time, or this isn't worth it. This pick your battles kind of mentality. This is just cowardice masquerading as rationality. All right? You can pick your battles once you know that you're a fully assertive person who could fight any battle. Then you pick your battles. Okay? When you know that you will battle anyone, anytime, any scenario, you will go down in flames, you'll take a punch to the face, you're not scared of shit anymore, then you can choose which ones you're going to do. But even then, there's really no reason for not being honest. Okay, if you want to be a confident person. If you don't want to be a confident person, then keep lying. But if you want to be a confident person, then you've got to pick every battle. And that doesn't mean you dominate the other person or change them. Keep remembering that. It just means you stand up for yourself. If you're at the kitchen table, dining room table, everyone's getting along and someone says a political thing that you don't agree with, yeah, now's not the time. We're having a nice dinner. Yes, now is the time, bro. Yeah, you don't need to convince this guy to vote for someone else. Just say, I disagree, and then keep eating your meal. And yes, it will get a bit awkward. And later on, your mum will say, you shouldn't fucking say that when Uncle blah, blah, blah. Just let him say it. And everybody will be whatever about it. Still do it. This isn't about them. It's about you. Your view got respected by you. That's all that matters. You don't have to battle this out. Once you've said your piece, you're done when it comes to opinions. Enforcing, we'll talk about a bit later. But if you can just agree, look, I will not stay quiet anymore. I'm going to at least say something every single time I have a disagreeable reaction to what's happening. I will respect that disagreeable reaction. Even if you're being too sensitive or irrational or unreasonable, you can still express that and then allow rational discussion to help you improve yourself. Okay? But you got to express it first to get that discussion going. Right? You got to understand that when it comes to manipulation, people take a mile 1 inch at a time. If you understand that, you'll never be manipulated again. Those inches matter. They never look like a big deal. That's the point. If I want to manipulate you, I'll do all these tiny baby little things that you will feel petty in addressing them. You think like, I can't say something about that. I'd be such a weakling or whatever. I want you to think that if I'm going to manipulate you. I'll take years to build these things up. I used to work with criminals who would convince guards to become corrupt. So the officers would start bringing in drugs and stuff. That's not done with one conversation. That's done over a year of micro transgressions. First, I just go into someone else's cell without permission in front of you, see if you say anything. Next, I ask to borrow your pencil and I don't give it back. And I just start seeing how many lines I can cross with you. And every time you assert yourself, I back down, wait a little bit, and then go again. But if you're really assertive all the time, I go pick someone else to manipulate. So never surrender an inch easily. Like I said, you don't have to turn into a fight. You're not trying to change their mind. When we think of someone who's just disagreeable and contrarian all the time, we roll our eyes like, oh, I'm not talking about being that person. I'm just talking about the person who's honest about their point of view. That's all. You let other people have theirs. You're not going to convince them of anything. Setting a boundary should be less than 30 seconds. It shouldn't be this big fucking thing where you try to sell the idea to somebody. Okay? You don't need to sell self-respect. So if you remember nothing else, the practical moving forward is just be honest about your preferences as much as you can with your current level of courage. Right? Honesty is a spectrum. Try to just get on the spectrum. Right? Even if it's like someone says a joke you find offensive, just don't laugh at least. That's assertive. Don't pretend to feel something you don't. Don't pretend to agree when you disagree. Okay? You don't need to fight, you just need to give it a voice. Now, let's talk about the physicality of this. This is my number one solution to the emotional problem. Okay? So if you struggle with your emotions during conflict, the key thing is to slow it all down physically. All right? It's rushing that makes emotions hard to deal with, because rushing is trying to get through the emotion. What we're going to do is sit in the emotion. It's a kind of deeper layer of calm. I might be angry and agitated at the higher level, but if I'm okay with being angry and agitated, I'm actually calm at the deeper level. So keeping it simple, keeping it slow, and keeping it proud. Okay, this isn't an argument. You're not trying to convince them of anything. If they're speaking really quickly and making good points and everybody's on their side, it doesn't matter, because you're not trying to change anybody's mind. Let them. Take your time. If they're like, see, he doesn't even have anything to say, let him say that, because you're choosing to breathe and go slowly. Do not allow yourself to be rushed by you or anyone else. All right? There should be massive pauses between when they finish talking and you start talking. In fact, there isn't going to be that much back and forth when you're setting a boundary. You just, here's my preference. I've said it now. You'll either respect it or you won't. Discussion is complete. Emotions only get really agitating and hard to manage when you're trying to convince the other person. When you don't have to convince the other person, it doesn't matter how you're feeling. Be agitated. Be scared. It's fine, because you don't actually have to win this war. Okay? We're going to talk about enforcement in a second. So keep it simple, keep it slow. The more emotional you feel, the slower your behavior, the longer your pauses, the less you say. Keep it very, very simple. Basic sentences, basic words. You're not trying to convince anyone, so you don't need to be articulate. You don't need to be clever. You don't need to back up what you're saying with citations. You just, I don't agree. Game over. Okay? Breath is the key here. So in order to keep it simple, you do not explain, you do not justify. This is not a rational debate. Assertiveness does not need to happen if everyone's being calm and rational. Assertiveness only comes up when people get irrational, aggressive, when emotions arise. Okay? So you can do something that I call headlining, which is you got this whole article. What's the headline that tells them the story? Rather than saying like, look, I need you to stop coming in my room because it's my private space and I need to have my own private space, or otherwise I'm going to feel unsafe in this house and blah, blah, blah. It's like, what's the headline of that story? Don't come in my room. Headline. Just give them the headline. Remember, you're not here to win an argument. You're here to assert your boundary. A boundary is a headline. Do this, don't do that. I like this, I don't like that. Single sentence. Like I said, if you've been talking for more than 30 seconds, you're doing it wrong. You're over-explaining. You're justifying. You're trying to sell it. You're trying to reduce the impact it has on them. You're trying to moderate their feelings while you talk. Let go of all that. Let them react to the headline. You don't even know how they're going to react yet. So give them the headline. And if further explanation really is required, then you can do it later, but not before. Do not preempt their objections. Remember, their objections don't matter when it comes to self-respect. This is not an argument. That's aggression. I know I keep saying the same shit over and over again, but you got to hear me out. When you realize that this is not an argument, most of your problems are solved. All that emotional shit gets reduced massively when you don't have to win. You don't have to convince them. You don't have to make them respect you or believe you or anything. That's what all the emotions were like, oh no, I'm not going to win. I'm not going to be able to convince them. This is high stakes. If you're like, all I've got to do is get the headline out, that's it, and I'm done. I'm done completely. And after that, enforcement action. But that's it. Then there's not that much to get emotional about. A bit of nervousness about saying it, a bit of fear about their reaction. But because you don't have to manage that reaction, that's it. All right? So remember also, if you're getting really emotional, it probably means you're getting aggressive. You're trying to control them. Let go of controlling them, and the emotion will simmer down. Breathe. Go silent. Let them make up their mind for themselves. Let them do whatever the fuck they think is right, so long as you don't let it harm you. Okay? So, setting boundaries, enforcing boundaries. This is the critical thing you need to learn. I go into great detail in the course about this. The setting boundaries is verbal. It's what you say. This happens once. You do not say it again. You really don't. You enforce. Okay? There are some exceptions. For example, if somebody has dementia and they literally forget, or somebody is very mentally disordered and you know that like you're going to have to repeat yourself because they have brain damage or something, I'll give you a pass on those. But everyone else, we're doing 95% of people, you set the boundary once. You say it once, and from there on out, you just enforce it. Enforcement is physical. It is an action. So you say, I like this, I don't like that, don't do that again, whatever. You set the boundary. Here's how I like you to behave. Here's what works best for me. Now you know. And now I'm going to leave it with you to see how you react to that. And if you react poorly to that, I'm going to protect myself from you. I'm not going to try and change you or punish you. I'm going to protect myself from you so that I stay on my path. So never tell them twice without some kind of enforcement. They get one warning shot. You're going to give them the benefit of the doubt that they didn't know. That's why you set a boundary in the first place, is maybe they're not clear on what respectful behavior is. I'll give them the benefit of the doubt they got a different idea about that, or they didn't realize that this was disrespectful or whatever. So I'm going to give them one shot. Now, if somebody's really healthy and you do this really directly and it's a concise headline, not some wafty thing that nobody can understand, then they will probably respect it straight away and you won't need to enforce it. Other times, even if they're healthy, sometimes you've got a weird preference. It's hard to remember. Like you don't like tomatoes in your food and they always cook with tomatoes. They might not get that straight away. Or they're a child and they don't have the ability to be very respectful at that age and so on. So you might have to enforce the boundaries. But if you have to often enforce a boundary with a fully grown adult, then odds are they just don't respect you, which is information you need to act on. Remember, so let's talk about what enforcement is, because this is the key. This is what it all comes down to. This is the how-to of assertiveness. All right, setting boundaries is, I know it looks like the hardest part. It's actually the easier bit. Enforcement's the hard part. You're not aiming to harm them. This is not vengeance. This is not punishment. You're not trying to make them hurt. Okay? You're going to make it impossible for them to harm you to the best of your ability. We're taking away their ability to do that behavior. Not by changing them, but by changing what we do. Okay? So, for example, taking away a child's toy the second time they throw it at you. You take it away for just 24 hours. This isn't a life sentence. You don't tear it up and put it in the bin to hurt their feelings. I remember seeing some lauded video on TikTok where a teen was disrespectful, so the guy just came in and smashed the teen's TV with a baseball bat. And everyone's like, yay! I'm like, he's worse than the teenager. Why are you applauding? That guy can't control himself and he thinks his teen's going to with that role model? Come on. But if you're like, okay, I told you not to throw the toy at me and you threw it at me again, you can't be trusted with the toy for the rest of today. Okay, so it's going up in the cupboard. No apology, no rage, no fucking like 50-point novel about why they're a bad kid. Just look, you obviously can't handle the toy right now. You get it back when I think you can handle it. Right? Just privilege being taken away and then give them back. No life sentences. You know, somebody interrupts you during a meeting. You'd say, look, let me finish. Don't keep interrupting me. They interrupt you again, you just walk away. You don't even say why you're walking away, you just walk away. You just remove their ability to interrupt you. If it's a situation where walking away isn't the most healthy response, you keep talking as if they haven't interrupted you. You just block them and keep talking. You show that you will no longer respect their interrupting. You will no longer even pay attention to it. You create a situation where their interrupting just goes into the void. It's another way of asserting their boundary or enforcing it. But I think walking away is better. On the way out, you might offer to reschedule. It's like, okay, obviously you're struggling a bit with interrupting today. When you feel that you're not going to do that anymore, let me know and we'll book another meeting. And you just walk on and continue with your life. Now, this shows a bit of the nothing to lose mentality required with enforcement action. You have to prioritize self-respect. You might have just lost a client. You might even lose your fucking job. A client I've got just lost his job, which he hated anyway, for a boss whom he hated anyway. So it's in his best interest. But yeah, asserting himself ended that career. Now, if it's a good career with a good boss, asserting yourself won't end it. Aggression might, and he was a bit aggressive, but asserting yourself won't. If asserting yourself ends something, it's probably in your best interest. If you lost a client just because you were being calmly assertive about your boundaries and enforcing a boundary they had already breached after you set the boundary, you don't need that client. Go get a better one. All right? If you're on a date with someone and you say, look, I can't tolerate somebody who does that behavior, and then they do it again and laugh at you, you're not missing out on the love of your life. Walk away. Go fucking find somebody else. 8 billion people in the world. You don't need to make this one work. So sometimes, quite often, walking away in various forms is the ultimate enforcement action. I'm going to take me as the privilege out of this. You don't get this anymore. You can't hurt this fortress anymore because it's no longer available. Hanging up the phone, leaving in the middle of family dinner because they're bullying you again. But I'll be back next Sunday, but I'm only staying as long as you guys are respectful. It's very, very powerful, very effective. If they want to be in a relationship with you, if they want you around, they're going to have to change their behavior. And if you're very consistent with that, the behavior will change. Even like you can get to the point where, let's say you've got a partner whom you love and you have a great relationship, but they're like a compulsive gambling addict. You change the PIN codes on all your banking so they can't use your money anymore. It's just a simple enforcement. Rather than trying to stop them from gambling, you make it so they can't, at least not with your money. Or you make it so like, look, the only conversation we're going to have is about you going to gambling recovery program. We're not going to talk about anything else. We're not going to watch any programs together. We're not going to go on any picnics until you sort out your gambling. All right. I'll still love you. I'm going to stay in the relationship with you. We're going to get through this together. But I'm not going to enable you by allowing you to think that this is okay behavior. That's enforcement action. You've already said don't gamble my money once. Once was enough. Maybe even once is more than needed. Right? Just enforce straight away. So you can stay in a loving relationship with someone you care about without having to tolerate bad behavior. Those two things are not contradictory, right? You can stop bad behavior and stay with someone. It's totally possible. Sometimes you just got to get really creative about what enforcement looks like. How do I enforce this without punishing them, without hurting them unnecessarily? What's the electric fence that they can't get past? You got a drug addicted friend, just refuse to hang out with them until they do rehab. To say, look, I'm your friend for the rest of your life, but we're not going to hang out while you're a drug addict. So when you're clean, you got my number, you'll be welcome back into my life. And until then, I can't have you around. This is for your own best interest, because I think you actually losing me might help motivate you to work on this. And if it doesn't motivate you to work on this, then I guess I'm just not that important to you anyway. Your drugs are more important. That's fine. That's your choice. I'm going to let you have that choice. I'm not going to try and stop using drugs. I'm going to stop your drug addiction from hurting me. As soon as it stops, we're mates again. Right? Office bully picking on you. Just go straight to HR. Don't make this something that they can talk about with you. Somebody's like, hey, I noticed you keep claiming that your work, claiming that my work is yours and taking the credit for it. And then they do it again. All right, boom, straight to HR. Here's the proof of them claiming my work and taking credit for it. We're going to make a big deal about this. Like, I'm not going to talk to someone who I've already talked to. That's the key here with enforcement action. And the great thing about enforcement action is you don't have to stay there having a big emotional discussion with them that's super uncomfortable. You just go straight into action where you actually get to avoid a lot of discomfort with them because you're just taking stuff away. But sometimes you'll have to have the discomfort with them because you're going to still be with them as those enforcement actions happen. If you're willing to pay that price, then you can be assertive. If you take your kid's toy away, they might have a big tantrum all day long. You go, okay, that toy stays in the cupboard. That's all I have to remember. Keep the toy in the cupboard. Anything else can happen. But as long as that toy stays in the cupboard, I've asserted myself. Tomorrow, I'll give them back the toy no matter how they're behaving. I'll stick to what I said I was going to do. I'll stick to the contract that I set up. That's assertiveness. So enforcement is about removing your privileges, removing your cooperation, removing your attention, removing your support, maintaining minimal contact and only baseline respect from you. Think of like all the good stuff of being with you as a person is a privilege. And only someone being respectful gets it. Knowing your secrets, spending time with you on holidays, sharing what you're going to work on and your goals, all of that's a privilege. It goes away as soon as someone's disrespectful. The fortress closes and they don't get to see any of the stuff inside. Now, it doesn't mean you'll be disrespectful. You're not going to be aggressive. You still maintain that baseline respect you give everyone because then they don't change you. When I was working with criminal offenders, some of them were disgusting individuals, by my opinion. I worked with a lot of sex offenders, murderers. The behavior was abhorrent to me. But if I was mean or cruel to them as a result of that, it means they've changed me. I'm not being assertive. I'm weak. So if I treated them with the same respect I give to my colleagues and strangers and my parents, the same baseline respect, not all the privileges, but the baseline respect, then they haven't changed me just by being a bad person on their side. Yeah. What I'd suggest is understanding the hassle approach. After working with psychopathic criminals, I realized you cannot move them with things like guilt or compassion or conscientiousness. They don't give a shit about anybody but themselves. You can't move them by saying, hey, you hurt people. They're like, good, they deserve to be hurt, right? But even then, they do not have the capacity for a hassle. Human beings can't handle a hassle. So if you can make it that hurting you is a hassle, then it's very unlikely to happen. And often that just means always speaking up, standing up for yourself, always making a big deal out of someone being disrespectful. But if you make any hurt towards you a big hassle, like it's not worth the effort, but cooperating and being respectful is smooth and easy, and you get that combination right, it's operant conditioning. They're going to go the path of least resistance. Now, this isn't meant to be a technique on how to manipulate others, though it could be misused that way. I'm going to leave it to you to decide how ethical you are with this. But most people get this the wrong way around. They make it easy to hurt them, and then they actually punish someone for being kind. People pleasers often build up so much resentment about all the hurt that they allow that the people who are actually nice to them, they punish them. Like somebody will do something they ask, and they're like, took your time. It's a punishment of someone actually being cooperative. They'll criticize someone who's nice to them, and then bow down and eat shit from somebody who's mean. You got to reverse that, okay? You got to make it that if someone's mean to you, they hit this wall of resistance that's just like, fuck, I'm not doing that again, right? If you always just walk out of a meeting when someone interrupts you, it's like, this is starting to get a real hassle now. Like, I do not want to have to keep having meetings adjourned. But it's like they listen to you and respectful in the meeting, and you're just like, boom, 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 solutions, cooperation. Hey, let me do you a favor. Like, you reward them for treating you well. It's not a hard decision for them. Now, if you only punish them, if you're only even just assertive, but there's no reward for cooperating, then it's not a very strong system. So part of being assertive is knowing when to kind of turn it off and be really encouraging and supportive. And basically, the more respectful and cooperative someone is, the more rewards they should receive. Like when I'll take my daughter's toys and put them in this bag if she doesn't clean up or if she's being like abusive towards me in any way. And, then she gets to get the toys back when she cleans up. When she gets back on board with good behavior, she gets the toys back. And I will let her choose more toys than she lost, kind of thing. So let's say she's lost like 3 toys over the week. And then she cleans up once. I'm like, now you can have all your toys back. It's like such a massive compensation for the healthy behavior that it's just not worth doing the unhealthy behavior when the difference between the two is so great. And you can do this the same with anyone, any contractor you're working with, whatever. Make it that working well with you makes their life so much better, so much easier. And this is what actually worked on criminal offenders. I found like if I made like disobeying the laws and the rules just this huge nightmare hassle with lots of court appearances and legal work and having to come into the office and stuff. And then as soon as they are cooperative, I'm just like, all right, let's get your life sorted. Do you want some help getting a job? Here, I found you a great place to live. Like their life just starts flowing. I just make it very clear, like, this is the path of least resistance, mate. This goes well for you. I'm making the choice a really easy one for them to choose, right? So do not punish compliance. If someone steps up and is respectful, like one mistake a lot of people make is they'll set a boundary and then the person like learns from their mistake and starts doing it. And like, oh, at least you're doing it now. See, I told you. And they're punishing them now, right? If someone actually does it, don't make a big song and dance about it, just a quiet thank you. You know, so I took the tomatoes out. Oh, thanks so much. I really appreciate that. So, oh, okay. So he isn't going to crow over me. He isn't going to be like, yeah, good. At least you listen this time. Like, make sure that being cooperative and respecting your assertiveness gets a reward. Okay. There's a secret background factor in assertiveness. Make sure at all times that you know how to survive without the other person. Okay. In all situations, whether you're dealing with your boss or a stranger or your partner or your parents, understand that it's going to be very hard for you to assert yourself if deep down you think, I need this person, I'm dependent on them. Because your brain, if it believes that, will not let you do something that might risk losing them. And assertiveness must take that risk. It will hardly ever happen, but you must be willing to take the risk. And one way to give yourself that emotional willingness to take the risk is to have a pivot plan. If this ends the relationship, what will I do next? How will I keep going? All right. If this is the thing that destroys everything, it's like my client earlier who, spoke up to his boss and then was fired. He's already working on his career, right? He's got a plan that actually requires him leaving this job. So this just accelerated the plan. Okay. Codependence disrespects yourself. It sets you up for failure. So make sure you can interdepend. You can work with other people, collaborate, cooperate, delegate various tasks to them, but always have in your mind, if they dropped out, if they died, if they left for any reason, how would I keep going without them? And if you always know what that is and that plan's like tucked away in a drawer ready to go, then you can assert yourself going, hey, if this ends it, I know what I'm doing next, rather than like, oh my God, it'll open up a void and we'll all die. It's amazing how important this bit is. I left it to the end to kind of emphasize and leave it lingering in your memory. If you've got a backup plan, it's way easier to assert yourself. If you don't have one, your brain's going to stop you. To give you a little sense of where this leads, like this is the basic level stuff we're talking about today, just sort of setting and enforcing a boundary to the best of your ability. But when you do this over a long period of time, you will build up courage. You'll start to really back yourself. You'll start to see that this is much better than the previous model you're working through. And get to where my clients get to, which is a nothing to lose mentality. The ultimate negotiation comes from a place of nothing to lose, where you're willing to walk away empty-handed. When you can prioritize your integrity over any other outcome, where you're willing to burn the world to the ground to respect your integrity, that's when the best things will happen for you. Ironically, that's when you'll get the best outcomes, is when you're willing to lose them all. That's the goal on the horizon. You do not get there overnight. Some of you might never get there without coaching or support. That's okay. Any steps towards that will improve your quality of life. Assertiveness is always helpful. It always makes things about yourself a little bit better. Yes, you will get bad reactions in the short term. You'll get really bad reactions from people who are a bad fit for you. None of this is bad. This is good news. It just won't be comfortable when it happens. But imagine, and this is what I want you to set your dreams on, imagine being somebody who's willing to lose it all, where nobody can control you because they've got nothing you need, where you can ruin any social harmony if needed to respect yourself, and you know that you can do that, when you won't be the bystander anymore. I've got to finish with a story that made this all worth it for me. So I'd been working on my assertiveness for a very long time. I've told this story before. I was at a bus station, I think it was bus station in the UK. My wife was in the toilet. I was minding the bags. I've told the story so many times. These really aggressive guys who had actually been on my bus, they got off. They were wearing like MMA clothing and stuff, and they had the knuckles and the cauliflower ears and shit. And there was this guy just sitting on the bench minding his own business, had nothing to do with anything. They'd had no interaction. An overweight guy. One of the dudes just started going in on, like, heckling him about his weight, calling him fat and all this stuff. Like schoolyard bullying, but grown adults in a bus station who are total strangers. And like everyone else watching, I was just in shock. Like, is this real? Is this a prank? Am I on YouTube right now? Like, what is this? Comprehend what was happening, that I was watching real life bullying. I just never saw shit like this. Probably because I'm not out in public very much. Now, this poor guy sitting on the seat, he had no backbone. He was just taking it. He was cringing. He was apologizing. 20 people in this bus station, like, atrium thing. All of them just looked back to their phones, pretending they couldn't see. That bystander effect. And I saw all this happening, and it's just clicked on. I'm like, this is it. This is my chance to fucking redeem all those times I never said anything. All those times I was like all the other fuckers, just taking it. But I was stuck because I was watching the bags, and, you know, it's UK. Take your eye off your bag, you lose everything. My wife finally gets back from the toilet, and I'm like, fuck. And finally, I just go straight to the dude who was actually walking away at this point, but I chased after him. And I stopped down and said, like, bro, what was that? That was so not cool. Now, I wasn't really trying to start anything with him. I just was standing up for what I believed in. Maybe my choice of words wasn't the best in terms of what we talked about today, but it was the intent that mattered. I was willing to get knocked the fuck out by this guy, and he had a friend with him, and they were both clearly fight trained. It wasn't going to be much of a fight, okay? But I was like, I will pick my teeth out of the gutter if I have to, rather than go home going, I wish I had said something. Because I've gone home feeling that, and it's awful. It's poison. So I was like, I'm going to fucking say something. And the guy folded, which was interesting but expected. When you're really assertive and somebody knows you've got nothing to lose, all the fight goes out of them. This is how you really protect yourself. This is why the small guys in prison will get left alone if they're like, I'll bite your balls off if I have to. Like, I have no limits. Those guys get left alone. So I was in that mentality. I'm like, all right, I'm going to get my ass kicked. I don't give a shit. Let's make this happen. And the guy's just, oh, sorry, bro, no, just kidding, blah, blah, blah. I mean, he wasn't kidding. The guy was crying, right? But he backed down, folded completely, which I was very grateful for, because had it been a fight, it would have been a nightmare for me. And then I went back and I spoke to the guy like, hey, no, ignore that dude. He's a dick. He folded as soon as I challenged him. He's got no balls. Don't worry about him. And I was able to sleep that night. And I'd redeemed all a lifetime of just taking shit from people. And that's what I want to inspire you guys to do. To work on this stuff so that when that moment comes, and those moments are very rare, it's very rare that you get a moment where you get to stand up in a real situation. You can't hope that you'll do it when the time comes. You need to be trained. So do the training, and then you'll be able to redeem yourself when that moment comes. Like I said, get in touch, dan@brojo.org, if you want any help with this. Those of you who came along live, thank you very much. I really appreciate it. I'll see you all next time. Cheers.